He shaped the sound of a generation, yet was never its poster boy. While others took the spotlight, he built the soul of the music from behind the glass. From silent studios to world stages, Benny Andersson lived through the rise, the unraveling, and the rebirth of one of pop's most iconic bands. But the story he is only now telling isn't about disco balls or sequins. It is about exhaustion, regret, fractured love, and the painful silence that followed the applause. After decades of speculation, Benny has spoken, and his truth is deeper, sadder, and more revealing than anyone expected. Before the world ever danked to the beat of Dancing Queen or wept to the melancholy of The Winner Takes It All, Benny Andersson was already busy shaping the invisible foundation of what would become one of pop music's most enduring legacies. Born on December 16, 1946, in the Väsastan district of Stockholm, Benny grew up in a working-class household where music was not a career path, but a cherished tradition. His father was a civil engineer, and his grandfather was a self-taught musician who introduced young Benny to the accordion at the age of 6. That humble instrument unlocked a deep fascination with melody and harmony that would never leave him. Unlike many of his peers who longed for stardom, Benny was not driven by a desire to be seen. He was more interested in understanding how music actually worked. From the mathematical structure of Bach to the earthy storytelling of Swedish folk songs, he taught himself piano entirely by ear and could replicate melodies after hearing them just once or twice. By the age of 10, he was already playing at family gatherings and school concerts, known not for showmanship but for his innate sensitivity to tone and emotion. In 1964, at just 18 years old, Benny joined the Hepstars, a Swedish rock band that would come to be known as the Swedish Beatles. With his arrival, their sound matured almost overnight. The group began topping the Swedish charts with hits like Sunny Girl and Wedding, songs penned by Benny himself. These early successes not only revealed his ability to write memorable melodies, but also honed his skills in studio arrangement and live performance. He quickly became known as the band's musical brain, quietly developing an understanding of both the commercial and technical sides of the music industry. Then came a pivotal night in 1966. Benny met Björn Ulvaeus while both were performing at a mutual friend's party. Björn, a member of the folk-pop group, the Hootenanny Singers, shared Benny's deep love of harmony arrangement and musical detail. Their jam session that evening led to an immediate and powerful partnership. Over the next few years, they began writing together, experimenting with different styles and structures, and even composing songs for other Swedish artists. Their collaborative bond grew exceptionally strong, not just because of mutual respect, but because they balanced each other perfectly. Benny was the emotional composer. Björn was the witty lyricist. That's why the early 1970s, Benny and Björn were not only co-writers, but also partners in life with two fellow musicians, Agnetha Faltskog, a chart-topping Swedish solo artist, and Annie Frid Lyngstad, a jazz turn-pop singer with a powerful alto voice. Their joint musical venture initially took form under the lengthy name Björn and Benny, Agnetha, and Annie Frid. The name was clumsy, but the chemistry was electric. They tried and failed to win the Swedish selection for Eurovision in 1973. Undeterred, they came back the following year with Waterloo, a glam pop anthem that won the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest and instantly made them international stars. Shortly afterward, they adopted a far more memorable name, Abba, an acronym using the initials of their first names. From that moment on, Benny Andersson was no longer just a pop musician. He was a sonic architect. He treated each song like a painting, layering instruments and arranging vocal harmonies with extraordinary precision, experimenting with synthesizers long before it became trendy. In the studio, he was known for his patience and perfectionism, sometimes spending days reworking a single harmony until it felt emotionally right. He wasn't interested in what was popular. He was interested in what was timeless. Even as Agnetha and Frida dazzled audiences in matching jumpsuits and Björn penned clever, bittersweet lyrics, it was Benny who sculpted the emotional subtext of Abba's music. His signature style blended brightness with depth, a Swedish melancholia masked within melody. Songs like Knowing Me, Knowing You, and Fernando carried this duality beautifully. Joy on the surface, sadness underneath. That was Benny's gift, not just to pop music, but to generations of listeners who sensed something deeper in Abba's seemingly simple songs. Benny Andersson wasn't just building songs. He was building a kingdom, one where every chord, every silence, and every note truly mattered. For most of the 1970s, Abba rode an unstoppable wave of global fame. But as the band soared publicly, it began to quietly erode from within. The unraveling wasn't sudden. It was subtle and slow, like a house weathered gradually by time rather than destroyed in a single fire. The first crack appeared in 1979 when Bjorn and Agnetha divorced. It was a deeply personal break, but one that the band tried to weather professionally. At the time, the group was working on their album Super Trooper, and though the songs retained their signature polish, the recording sessions began to carry an unmistakably heavy tone point. 2 years later, Benny and Frida followed the same painful path. Their relationship had once been described as fiery and symbiotic, a true musical love story. They had met in 1969, long before Abba came into existence, and built their connection through sound before anything else. Frida once said that Benny understood her in a way no one else ever had. But understanding in the studio didn't always translate into understanding at home. Benny's obsessive perfectionism, the very quality that made him brilliant behind the mixing board, left little room for emotional availability in his personal life. Frida, expressive and deeply emotional by nature, felt his growing absence keenly. Same name, and Benny had taken complete creative CBY 1981. Benny admitted to having fallen in love with Mona Norclett, a television producer he had met during a broadcast special. He told Frida the truth, but the damage was already done. The split was quiet and even professional in its handling, but the next and final studio album, The Visitors, released that same year, reflected the emotional frost that had settled over everything. Songs like When All Is Said and Done and Slipping Through My Fingers dripped with unspoken pain. The sparkle was fading, and though the band would continue for another year, something absolutely vital had already disappeared. For over 40 years, the story of Abba's end was defined not by explosive headlines, but by a deafening silence. Unlike most legendary bands that go out with a farewell tour or some final cathartic performance, Abba simply vanished. Their last official single, Under Attack, was released in December 1982. It failed to make the impact of their earlier hits. There was no follow-up album, no world tour, no curtain call, just a gradual fade into a mist of speculation and fan theories that would stretch across decades. Their absence left a vast void, and into that void came endless questions. Why did they stop when they were still so successful? Was it money, personal drama, or creative conflict? For years, none of the band members gave a definitive answer. Interviews remained vague. The word hiatus floated around uselessly, and their public appearances became rare and cautiously polite. In many ways, Abba became a myth frozen in time, the perfect pop group that simply ceased to exist without explanation. Benny Andersson, long known for his quiet introspection and avoidance of personal publicity, sat down for a candid interview with The Guardian. He didn't arrive with a rehearsed narrative. There was no publicist-crafted statement or airbrushed PR spin. Instead, Benny did something rare and courageous. He told the truth plainly. We were exhausted, he admitted. Marriages were falling apart. The music was starting to sound unnatural. We needed to stop to preserve ourselves. That simple, unsentimental statement hit harder than any scandal ever could. In just a few words, Benny confirmed what many longtime fans had always quietly suspected. The breakup hadn't come from betrayal or artistic feuding. It had come from emotional depletion. After years of performing, recording, and maintaining the illusion of joy, while their personal lives collapsed silently behind the scenes, the group was utterly drained. Not dramatically, not publicly, just quietly and fatally. Then, in April 2025, Benny gave a follow-up interview to Billboard, offering even deeper insight. He described the band's final 2 years, 1981 and 1982, as uninspired workdays. What had once been vibrant, joyful collaboration had turned into cold routine. He and Bjorn were still writing, but without the same energy or purpose. The songs came more slowly. The studio sessions grew. Even more telling was how Benny framed the group's decision to stop. He didn't call it a failure. He didn't romanticize it. He described it simply as an inevitable unraveling. It wasn't sustainable anymore, he said. We couldn't go on pretending, not to each other, not to ourselves. This acknowledgement wasn't just illuminating. It was healing. For decades, fans had sensed that the final Abba albums felt different, more introspective, more melancholic. Songs like One of Us, like an angel passing through my room, and The Day Before You Came didn't just sound sad. They were sad. There was a heaviness in the lyrics and arrangements that betrayed something far deeper than shifting pop trends. Listeners felt it, even if they couldn't quite name it. Benny's confession finally validated that feeling. The ache, the sense of something quietly unraveling beneath the polished surface, was never a projection. It was entirely real. What is striking is that none of Benny's revelations carried even a trace of